Okay. Okay. Director Coon. Could I have directors take their seats, please? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ian Morrison. I'm the chair of the board of directors of the Cowichan Valley Regional District, and welcome to everyone in our gallery today. I'd like to start by just noting on today that when they've dropped the writ and they've called an election, that this isn't like the House of Commons, and we generally discourage applause and displays and placards and that sort of thing. So we'd like to conduct the business of the community in a fairly orderly fashion, and would appreciate everybody working with us to get through the business today. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this meeting is taking place and we're gathered in the territory of the Coast Salish people. I'd like to welcome alternate Director Haim to our table today. And I'm getting frantic waving from the cheap seats where it looks like it's really hard to hear. So can I ask everyone to speak closely into their microphone and ask staff if it's possible to turn up the equipment without getting much feedback? I'd also like to note that there was a Subaru key fob found in the ladies' washroom. If anyone is missing their key, or they can see our recording secretary to the side over here. Your wife, say. Also like to note that today is a kind of a sad and auspicious day, and that September 11th, a number of years ago, there was a terrible disaster in New York, and just like to take a moment to note the lives lost and acknowledge those people that rushed in when everyone else was fleeing. I'd like to ask everyone who has an electronic device on them to please put it on silent or vibrate. And with that, we will do our best to accommodate everyone today. I just want to note that we have, we're receiving a public hearing report, and we'll be considering information today. And if there's anyone that was wanting to make comment during the public input period around the Couverton rezoning, it isn't allowed under our procedure policy because we are considering this public hearing record. And we would also like to note that for those of you that are here to speak to an application that may be in stream, we have delegations, provided we adopt the agenda as it is, that will be speaking to biogas in general, but there has been acknowledgement from the delegation that there will not be specific file mentioned and alluded to in their presentation, and because the board has not, or the committee has not received the file and considered it yet. So with that, Ms. Legault, the first item would be number 2 on the agenda. It's off.
Item 2 is approval of the agenda, and I note there is...
Director Acton.
I have an NB1 to add, just a request for advisory planning commissions.
So can we have a motion to approve the agenda with that inclusion? Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Staples. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. I'd also just like to mention, with having the sizable crowd in the audience today, that should there be any emergency happen, that everybody remain calm and let's make sure that we can exit the building in an orderly fashion if that necessity arises. Next item, Ms. Legault.
Thank you. Item M1 is the regular board meeting minutes of August 28th, 2019, and staff note that administrative correction is required to Resolution 19-375 to strike reference to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, as the Ad Hoc Committee on Climate Change is not formally established by the AVICC. And with that correction, the recommendation is that the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 28th, 2019 be adopted as amended.
Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Toporowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair. There's no business arising from the minutes, and so public input period.
So now I'd like to welcome anyone that would like to come forward and provide input to the board on matters on the agenda today. And the policy in regards to the public input period is before you on the screens. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Mariah Wallner, and I live in electoral area E, and I'm here to talk about item SR2 on your agenda, the staff report. I would like to address some of the comments that were made at the EASC last week when this topic was being discussed. North Cowichan councillors are faced with a very, very huge and important decision that could have very serious ramifications for the entire valley. They want your opinion. They passed a motion asking you to give them their opinion. You are not stepping on anybody's toes. You don't have to invite them to your birthday party just because they invited you to yours. So I hope that we can dispense with this idea that you are somehow interfering by giving an opinion. And it's not a binding one, and you don't get to vote. The second thing I'd like to say is that the staff report that was put together with the help of my area director, Alison Nicholson, was based on her listening to complaints from people in my area for the last 3.5 years. She knows what the issues are, and they're important ones, and she raised those issues because they reflect the issues that people in my area are dealing with. The last thing I want to say is that North Cowichan has just released the reports by their acoustical experts who reviewed the VIMC noise studies, and they are damning. Those noise studies are barely worth the paper they're written on. And the experts that were hired by the Muni confirm that based on the data, this track has a significant impact on people in Satlam. So this concerns me and other people who pay taxes to the CVRD, and I really urge and encourage you to let our voice be heard through this referral. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next up, welcome.
Hello. My name is Josh Larson. I am a part of a group of local dairy farmers interested in climate change. In reviewing the delegation that will be coming before you today, I am concerned that the Canadian Biogas Association has been quoted sometimes out of context. And with that being said, I have a letter written September 5th, 2019, addressed to the Cowichan Valley Regional District from the Canadian Biogas Association. In light of recent discussions surrounding a biogas plant in the Cowichan Valley, the Canadian Biogas Association is responding with information about biogas plants in Canada to highlight the opportunity this technology offers in addressing issues facing Canadians today. Biogas plants offer a solution to managing Canada's organic waste, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and expand renewable clean fuel alternatives. Canadians generate 18.4 million tons per year of organic waste, and only 32% of this is diverted from landfills. And biogas is a proven technology to help protect our environment and meet climate change goals. Waste in landfills emits methane, a destructive greenhouse gas emission 25 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. Biogas plants use this organic waste to make biogas, which is primarily comprised of methane. This biogas is used to produce renewable energy in the form of heat, power, and transportation fuels. It is important to note that the Canadian Biogas Association does not endorse individual biogas plants, as it is the role of regulators, such as the BC Ministry of Environment, to ensure these plants are properly planned and managed. However, biogas plants have become a well-established technology in Canada, and more specifically in British Columbia. Furthermore, if properly planned and well-designed with the surrounding community in mind, biogas plants are suitable for any location, no matter how urban or rural. Furthermore, if properly planned and well-designed with the surrounding community in mind, biogas plants are suitable for any location, no matter how urban or rural.
You've got 30 seconds.
There are approximately 100 biogas facilities in operation in Canada today, over which 50 are on farm, many others located in urban areas. The siting of these plants, the technology and operational standards are well understood and have a very successful, proven track record. For more information regarding biogas plants and resources, please visit the Canadian Biogas Association's website, and I would be pleased to address any questions you might have. Sincerely, Jennifer Green, Executive Director, Canadian Biogas Association.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi. My name's Audra Kane. I live on La Fortune Road, just down the road from the proposed biogas plant. Myself and my 2 children both have autoimmune diseases. One of my children was recently diagnosed with a rare bone disease. My husband and I work very, very hard at keeping our family healthy. This biogas plant puts that at risk. There are far too many risks.
Excuse me, I was trying to be very specific where we can't have reference to any specific application that is in stream. So I have to ask you to please keep your comments general and
Okay.
not geographically
Okay.
located in relation to any proposed application.
All right, I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's far too many risks to our air and our water, and you will see that in many reports of biogas plants around the world as well as here in BC. The biogas plants offer more risks than they do benefit communities. My intention for sharing with you some of my personal family information is to give you an idea of who is affected by these plants put in these general locations. Thanks for your time, I appreciate it.
Well done, yes. Is there anyone else who would like to provide input to the board this evening?
Good evening. My name's Catherine Robinson. I am one of many people, your constituents here from Arbutus Ridge, who have considerable concern over the biogas plant that is being proposed in our general area. And I'm sure you'll see from others as well. And you'll see from the PowerPoint slides that Mr. Larson's presentation is all very general. We don't have an issue with biogas. We have an issue with where it is being proposed.
Again, I must ask you to refrain from any geographical references or specific references to an application that may be in stream. It's the rules.
Yeah,
We
I
have to
understand that. I
follow them.
didn't think I did, but I mean, you know, it's everybody knows what we're talking about here. So, you know.
Would anyone else like to provide some general comments and input to the board on any topics on the agenda?
Hello, my name's Beth Pulford. This mic is high. I have a couple of questions about the biogas.
This is
plant.
an input period, not question period.
Okay. For input, and from what I have read, the ALC requires that 50% comes from the farm itself of its product. In this application,
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off.
okay,
You can't make reference to the specific, there's going to be a public hearing where anyone with any view, pro or con to an application will have the opportunity to speak. If this is not the time and place to provide fulsome input to the board, there will be a full public hearing, provided the board authorizes that it proceed to a public hearing. If this is going to proceed, it will at the very least have a full and open public hearing for people to have the opportunity to share. Today isn't that opportunity to make references to an application that may be in stream.
okay. Well, I really have nothing, I guess, to say then. Thanks.
Thank you for coming, and I'm just trying to ensure that there's fair and equitable process for everyone. We want to ensure that you're heard, and we also want to provide a fair and defensible process for people that make application to the regional district. Welcome.
Donna Anderson, Arbutus Ridge in Cobble Hill, and I am definitely against any idea that we should have a biogas plant close to our community. It's,
Donna,
sorry,
if you want to talk about biogas, feel free. If you want to talk about in
Okay.
British Columbia or Vancouver Island,
Well,
but
biogas-
no specificity to the geographic or the file in question, please.
okay. I
Thank
think
you.
that's difficult to do, Mr.
Yes.
Chairperson, but to say anything without saying where it is, but I am against it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Michael Bingham from Arbutus Ridge. The gentleman that read the letter from the Biogas Association, it's all very nice. I would just like to remind people that a number of years ago, the Tobacco Association told us that smoking was good for us. An association will always support its members, and it is a organization that is there to increase what they do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, for a change of pace. No insult intended. You have heard from a number of the, Mr. Chair, thank you. You have heard from a number of members of the Satlam community and the members of the public outside Area E with real concerns related to the impacts of noise well beyond the immediate area of concerns for wildlife, watershed, and development contrary to the content of 2050. This is SR2, by the way. Can you appreciate how hard it was to hear some members of the board say it is none of their business what North Cowichan approves? Isn't it incumbent on them to provide comment to speak for our residents? Mr. Chair, the members of the ESC are duly elected and make decisions on behalf of the public at a local and regional level on a regular basis. Can the public not count on the directors to speak on their behalf, to speak on the behalf of the environment? You are not offering unsolicited comments. North Cowichan asked for this committee's and ultimately the board's opinion. I'm sure to make sound decisions based on the best interest of not only their community, but hopefully their immediate neighbors and beyond. Mr. Chair, I hope we would reciprocate with a similar consideration if the shoe was on the other foot and a land use that had such a potential for impact as this one does. The devil is in the details of this application. As you have heard, there is considerable concern related to land use and noise within the proposed bylaw. Contrary to the proposal is go-kart use. According to documents submitted, the go-karts would be afforded limited use, but are an unrestricted permitted use in the proposed bylaw. Contrary to street legal car use only, that is not reflected in the proposed bylaw. Would race cars, razor-type off-road vehicles, and street-legal vehicles with modified exhaust be restricted in zoning? No. The
You have
other-
1 minute left.
The other piece of this application that troubles me, along with other items that we've seen on previous agendas, is the disconnect between the official community plans and zoning bylaws. It would seem if applicants are unsuccessful in an OCP amendment, they then seek a zoning bylaw amendment to obtain their goals. This would point to a significant disconnect between the OCPs and zoning bylaws. North Cowichan is embarking on an OCP review, and as is the CVRD through HOCP and modernization process. Are our communities being excluded from looking at land use designations and zoning bylaw reviews that would be reflective of the goals and aspiration of our communities? The Cowichan 2050, a regional initiative with one-off applications that potentially lead to haphazard and injurious development. Mr. Chair, I would hope...
Your time is up.
Can I just finish my last
Sentence, please.
Thank you. I would hope that the directors of the ESC would support our local community and Director Nicholson, along with the member municipalities, to convey a joint message of deep concern to North Cowichan Council on this proposed land use. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you very much. We have 20 seconds left in our allotted 15-minute time period.
Mr. Chair, I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake. I had an invitation to visit a farm across from the racetrack and was there trying to enjoy the nice ambience. But when you hear race cars whining, that may be music to some people's ears, but when you have to listen to that 7 days a week, it's really not right. So I think that I would appreciate a good letter to the North Cowichan explaining that this is just not noise. It's a real pain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public input period, and turn to Ms. Legault. Next item.
Thank you. Delegations, item D1, Amy Johnson, Cermak Canada, and Jamie Guzman, Ocean Farms Hatchery Manager, with an update on regional operations.
Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, do I just hit escape? Yeah, okay. And I have handouts here. Do I give those to you?
Who would you like me to hand them out?
It's one for the chair, the vice chair, and the CAO. All right. Good evening, and thank you for having us, Chair. We appreciate your time. We also appreciate that it's a full house, and there's a delegation following us that I believe most people are here to see, so we'll keep it short and concise.
Can you hold on for just a second? Could I ask the people outside the doors to please keep quiet so we can hear the delegation that's before us, please? Thank you very much. Please proceed.
You bet.
Mic went off.
Is it on now? There
Yep.
we go. Okay, so I'm Amy Johnson, Communications and Engagement Manager for Cermak Canada. With me is Jaime Guzman. He's our hatchery manager for the Oceans Hatchery, which is located just south of Duncan. We're here to just provide you with a short, quick, and again, out of respect for time, and the delegation that's behind us will be quite quick and concise, just to provide our operational update. So I'll start with who Cermak Canada is. We are a salmon farming company. We have a head office located in Campbell River. We do have a hatchery here in Duncan, as mentioned. We also have operations off of Tofino and in the Broughton Archipelago region. We have about 300 employees located across the island, and we produce about 20,000 metric tons of farm salmon per year. My job with the company is to really focus on the community and to figure out how we can amalgamate into communities, provide value where we operate, and be of a benefit to the community. So one of our main programs, which we're currently rehauling, is our sponsorship and donation program. I've been with the company for just over 6 months, and up until that time, the donations program had sort of just been done off the side of the desk. But it is getting redone, and I would really urge everybody in the community to take a look at our website and our new donation criteria. We'd be happy to fund projects that the community deems worthy and look how we can add value. The second thing that we're quite proud of is that we do really value our employees. So if you look on the chart here, the average wage per community is listed along the bottom, and then the average Cermak wage. So we pay about 20% higher than the average salary for our employees, just because we really value them. They're part of our family, and we couldn't do what we did without them. So with that, I will hand it over to Jaime.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce Ocean Farms Hatchery. I'm not completely fluent in English, so I just arrived 3 years ago to the country. I'm from Chile. Ocean Farms Hatchery is located in Caulfield Road and the area of Ocosila, just behind the Old Farm Market. It's been there since 1986. And originally was licensed to grow both Chinook and coho salmon, and was switched to Atlantic salmon in the 90s. Our fish spend an average of 14 months at our hatchery before they are transferred to our sea sites located on the east coast and west coast of Vancouver Island. From egg to smolt, we mimic creek beds and river habitats through the use of specially designed incubators like trays, and finally we use tanks. And our eggs and fish are constantly monitored and checked for health and growth. Our hatchery operates with flow-through water and recirculating aquaculture systems that we used to call RAS water. And that means that we are able to recirculate around between 96 up to 98% of our water. So we have been doing an enormous effort to reduce our water usage through the years by adding more technology. So it's been an enormous improvement. Wastewater is then screened and filtered and discharged into 4 settling and infiltration ponds, and then also discharged by injection wells back into the ground. We count with different certifications as CERMA Canada, as you can see on the presentation, that like ISO and ISO 9001, 14001, 22000, and OHS AS 18001. We also hold certification from OSSE, BAP, that is Best Aquaculture Practices, the original principles for sustainable aquaculture, and ASC, Aquaculture Stewardship Alliance. This slide shows what actually we use during the year. You will see that we have, depending on the stage of that you will see that is from eggs up to smolts, that is the stages that we produce. We receive green eggs when they are just recently fertilized, and then we replicate nature, and we are able with our technology basically to produce smolts that are ready to go to the sea, and by using flow-through system and 2 buildings that are recirculation systems. This chart uses how complex is every stages, the stages for our fish hatchery, and you will see that the recirculation system are those charts that are the square charts, and then at the bottom of that slide we will see that we have the infiltration ponds, and we can see that the fish is screened, and then we can.
Okay, just checking.
So all our waste is captured by mechanical filtration, and then we are able to capture that and have a final disposal with this company that is able to produce compost with it. Okay. And we count with 13 full-time employees at our hatchery. We operate the whole year by doing different parts of the salmon cycle, and and we have 1 hatchery manager, that is in my case, 2 assistant managers, maintenance, and different type of technician depending on their qualification and the training. And we provide a lot of training actually to provide more experience and for this husbandry. And in annual expenditures in the local area in Vancouver Island, in 2018 we were expending around $1 million, depending on contractors, suppliers, different vendors. So it's been an important way to support different companies as well with their services. And just a few slides just to show what kind of technology we have. On the top left, those are our incubators. The eggs are on the middle one. That beautiful color is on one of our compasses. And the outside tanks, and we are able to recirculate water up to 15% of the flow-through water in our bigger tanks as well. And then we have our recirculation systems where we are able to recirculate close to 96, 98% of the water. So we are very efficient doing that. And there is a lot of technology and to monitor the fish. And you will see that we have a computer. The system is completely computerized. And one of the slides shows that we had vaccination as well for them before they go to the sea. More machinery like mechanical filtration. On the middle one, on the top, that's the machine that we use to sort the eggs. That is pretty neat, actually. We are able to separate the good ones from the bad ones, or the dead fish, dead eggs at that point when they have eyes. So it's very interesting and a beautiful process. We are able to disinfect the water as well at the entrance of the hatchery and at the entrance of every building. So it's been very good for our biosecurity as well. And sorry, the previous one. Yeah, no, that's okay. And finalize just to finalize that we have different processes like. Starting from our fish tanks, we are able to produce ozone for water clarification. We do particle removal. We are able to manage the water chemistry of the water, like pH, ammonia, nitrate. And we are able to remove the CO2 of the water as well. So we are giving the best conditions we can provide to the fish to keep going. And we are able to do a disinfection of the water with our UV system, and we provide oxygenation to the water so they can survive. And that's our presentation for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. I count 24 seconds left on the clock. Well done.
Good.
Director Wilson, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, good presentation. Thank you for that. Just a couple of questions on the eggs. Where do you get the eggs from, and how do you sort bad from good?
We receive the eggs from our broodstock hatcheries, and they fertilize the eggs. They keep the broodstock in enclosed system. That's a land-based facility, and we have one up to the north. The name is Cypress, and that's at the sea. So a portion of them they come directly from there. And we start with just fertilized eggs. We call them green eggs, and then the next stage will be eye eggs when the eyes actually appears. And we continue with the hatching, first feeding, then fry, and then later on we will be producing the smolt by adjusting the lights. So we have lights to manipulate or replicate what happens between winter and spring, actually, so we can manage that. And it's very interesting. So, yeah.
I have Director McGonigal next.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned in one of your slides nitrite and nitrate removal.
Yes.
Is that implemented into the filtration wells after?
Yes, that's part of biofiltration, actually. It's not a mechanical filtration. It's very interesting as well. Bacteria like Nitrosoma and Nitrobacter are part of the biofilter. So we have different chambers. The most toxic element coming out from the outlets or the tanks is the feces that are mechanically removed from the system immediately. Then the water goes to the biofiltration system, a portion of it. And the bacteria is transforming the ammonia into nitrite and then into nitrate, so that there is a less toxic chemical. So once we do that, we are at the same time applying a small amount of ozone for clarification purposes. So we have protein fractionators in order to do that. So that's another part of the process that we have been adding to improve the quality of the water. And that, so that is more or less the biological filtration. The mechanical filtration is done with drum filters. So, and those are 40 microns. Those panels are 40 microns. So they are really efficient in removing the particles of the water. And we are able to remove the CO2, that is, as animals, they release that CO2, and then we are able to oxygenate the water with these low-head oxygen areas or LHOs. So and at the same time, we can provide supersaturated oxygen to the water because we have oxygenation cones. So we use pumps. We use the cone, and then we are able to mix that to a high percentage of saturation, close to 245%. That is really high. So everything here is in terms of improve technology and efficiency, and try to keep them alive in the best conditions we can.
Just to follow up, if I may,
Follow
I'm
up.
sure you're open to tours of the facility to anyone who's interested.
Yeah, we can arrange something with. You can call our head office or Amy, and we will be happy to set up something. Yes, of course. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you very much. We have Director Marsh next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to our guests. Thank you for your presentation. I learned something, there was quite a few things I didn't know, but one thing that I found very surprising was that you actually are farming Atlantic salmon since the 90s. So I was taught a long time ago, there is no dumb question. I understood that Atlantic salmon were conditioned for the conditions of the Atlantic Ocean. Is that correct?
Do you want me to take this? Okay, so what I've learned is the reason why we actually farm Atlantic salmon is they're a lot easier to handle. So one of my bosses is actually used to be a terrestrial farmer. So she compared Pacific salmon that don't do well in stress, they don't do well being handled, which our fish are handled quite a bit, while Atlantic salmon really don't seem to mind. They're quite strong, they're quite sturdy, they're resistant to disease, so they're okay with handling, which we have to do for vaccinations and medication and health checks. So it's not so much that they're conditioned to survive here, it's that they are agreeable to farming. And so they've basically, the fish that we farm at this point are essentially domesticated.
I
Follow
see.
up?
And follow up, please. Thank
Yep.
you, Mr. Chair. So when you say they're transferred to an ocean farm, that's an open pen in the
Yes.
ocean?
Yes.
So I would think like maybe humans who come from different parts of the world, now that we're not Pangea anymore,
Yep.
they have, depending when they are from, their immune systems are stronger against certain diseases than someone from, say, the other. So I haven't really studied this a lot, but I do understand there's some pushback about salmon, Pacific salmon, and diseases maybe being caused by farmed fish.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? Can you point me to something I can read about if there's a correlation between a species that really isn't native to here and how it might be affecting our native species?
Yeah, so what I can do, there's actually a couple studies that just came out from DFO that are available on their website. So what I can share is this, is that our fish they've been in this water for 20 years. We don't bring in any eggs or any fish from. So all of our fish are, like Jaime said, from our brood stock. So they're fish who have been born and raised in these waters. When they leave the freshwater hatcheries, they're health checked, they're tested, and they're vaccinated. So they do go into the ocean water. We are very confident and comfortable in saying they go in disease-free. There is a virus that occurs naturally in the waters here called PRV, and that's the one that's been in the news quite a bit lately. The conversation around that, I think, speaking without having had to digest the recent DFO released studies that came out, the conversation around that is how did PRV get in the water? So was that 30 years ago? Has it always been here? There's evidence to show that it is in the water. Once our fish go into the water, they do come in contact with the virus. We know that they go in PRV free, but the question is, how long has PRV been here? Where is it originally from? All of those, because there are different strains. That's the other thing to add to the conversation too. So the strain that we have here doesn't cause any type of symptoms in Pacific or the Atlantic salmon, but there's a strain in Norway and also in Chile that does cause symptoms in the fish. So there's different strains of it, and trying to identify how long has it been here, what is it doing, and where did it come from. So that's sort of the larger conversation right now.
Thank you. I would appreciate it if you could send those reports.
I actually don't have the reports. They're from DFO, so they're available through the DFO website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the delegation. Hi, I'm the area director. You're actually, I believe you're in Cowichan Bay, not Duncan. So I
is that
always
what
like
it's
to
called?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Coxila is actually, that part of Coxila is in Cowichan Bay, so I just wanted to correct you on that. And for all the years that I've been involved, I knew there was some kind of a hatchery there, but I've never been able to tour it or see it. So it would be great if there was a tour. That'd be appreciated. Thank
We
you.
can definitely set something up.
Director Sebring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the delegation. I heard the reference to green eggs, and I want to ask if there's ham, but that wouldn't be appropriate. Yeah. There's a lot of, I hesitate to call it rhetoric, but there's a lot of information, if I can put it that way, that the whole fish farming industry is responsible for sea lice and for just about every deleterious effect we're seeing in wild salmon populations on the West Coast. And there is a school of thought that says the only way to do fish farming safely is to do it in an entirely contained land-based model. What do you say to that?
So we have a couple thoughts on that. I'll start with the sea lice. So again, since our fish come from fresh water, they are sea lice free. Sea lice are a saltwater parasite. So when our fish go in the water, they have no disease and no sea lice. The problem does come in the water is with any farmed animal, there can be the amplification effect, right? So the wild salmon pass by with sea lice who detach, and then they come into our farm and attach, and then they have a an easier time to replicate, essentially, because it's a farm situation. So we do acknowledge our role in that, for sure. So how can we mitigate that, and what are we doing to mitigate that? So we do actively treat our fish and monitor for sea lice levels. Touch wood, we've had a couple of very good years on the east coast of the island here with low sea lice levels. We do a couple of things. So we do area-based management. So out of all of the farms that we have in an area, we take a look at where are there migration routes for wild salmon. So we know that during sensitive periods, which are when either adult salmon are heading up to spawn or juvenile are coming out to head back to the ocean, those are our sensitive periods. So during those periods, we try to look to have larger fish or no fish stocked in the farms near those tributaries. The larger fish are more resilient to the lice, so they don't seem to transmit it or catch them as easily, so you don't see that same amplification effect. So that's one way. We also do treat our fish with Slice, which is an in-feed medication. We also do hydrogen peroxide baths in a wellboat. And then recently we've purchased a $13 million hydrolyser, which is a purpose-built barge. And it's pretty amazing. So what it is it has 4 intakes, and it takes the fish up into this barge where it goes through 2 chambers of differentiating water pressure. So the first chamber, they're hit with water pressure down, which is 34 PSI, which I'm told is comparable to a kitchen faucet. The next passage that they go through is upward pressure. So the first one loosens the sea lice and eggs, and the second one removes them. So now the sea lice are removed, the clean fish are returned back to the pen, and all of the ocean water that's used in the treatment process is then triple filtered. So we get all of the lice, all of the eggs, and then we remove them from the water and store them and then dispose of them on land. So it doesn't use any chemicals, any medication, just ocean water.
What about the notion of just making it land-based and that's it?
Yep, so that's a new technology and we're definitely watching it. We're not saying no to it. We're saying right now it doesn't seem to be that feasible. Especially here where we are. So in order for land-based to be feasible, you have to be close to markets because you have to be able to transport them quickly and safely and easily. You also, to look at our farming, which is one of the most sustainable proteins in the world, if you go to land-based, you add all of those fossil fuels back into the process. Now you're needing gallons and hundreds of gallons a minute of fresh water and natural gas and electricity to heat the water and process it. And then on the other side, to be blunt, it's actually not great living conditions for the fish. They're packed in so tightly to make it profitable, they can't even really move. So they're packed into tightly packed water, putting all the carbon fossil fuels back into the process. That's not to say we're never going to do it. It's a new technology and we're monitoring it. We actually just are reloading it in Norway. We're sampling. It's called a semi-closed containment system. So what it looks like is your traditional round salmon farm, but it's got a double liner in it. So that one liner is a solid barrier, and then it has 4 water intakes that are adjustable depth. So you can actually change the depth that you're bringing in the fresh water from. So by doing that, you can actually avoid pulling in sea lice and algae and all of the harmful things to our farmed populations, while also eliminating any kind of contact between wild and farmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no other hands, Director Staples. Oh, sorry, I didn't see either of you. Director Staples and Smith. Director Staples.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Sebring, for asking those questions and providing answers. That was part of what I was hoping to understand a bit more. And I also was curious about where else you do these presentations. So what other levels of government or forms of government do you present to and work with?
Okay, we'd be happy to present at all levels. We normally do try to come annually to municipalities and regional districts. Anything outside of that, we're open to. We do meet locally with, annually, with our MLAs and our MPs. But I mean, the more people we can talk to, we're happy to. So,
do you ever present to First Nations governments in our regional districts, since they don't sit at our regional tables?
You know what? I'm going to have to follow up. We actually have a First Nations relationship coordinator, and she handles all of our First Nations relationships. So I know she has quite frequent meetings and does present our informational updates. I'm not sure. I'd have to check on this far south, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
And I can get back on that.
Thank you. Director Smith.
Through the chair to our guests, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question for Mr. Guzman. Where are you from in Chile?
From Chile?
Yeah.
Originally, I'm from Punta Arenas.
Oh, Punta Arenas.
Yes.
I love Punta Arenas.
Yes,
oh
that is just 1,500 kilometers north from Antarctica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've traveled Chile from Punta Arenas all the
Really?
way to the north.
Oh,
And,
I'm glad you have
a
done
lot
that.
of times. And I have seen the fish farms there.
Yeah.
And you were indicating that you have worked in the fish farm industry in Chile.
Yes.
So what do you find that the direction that the DFO is going is in comparison to what has gone on in Chile, that this is a good direction?
The government in Chile is really strict, and is getting more strict year after year. And I'm glad that happened, and I'm glad that that's happened here as well. And that's a way for us to find improvements, and we do whatever we can to make it better.
Follow up?
It's great that we have somebody like you who's had experience in Chile and gone through maybe some of the rough times in Chile.
Oh,
and
yes.
it gives you, gives you an opportunity when you're working here to use that expertise.
Yeah, I
that
came
you
here
learned
like
that
in
direction.
2010 for 1 year after the crisis that there was in Chile. And I just came here to knock in the door, and the company gave me the opportunity. But later on, I came back to Chile. I continued my working with Cermaq there, and then I knocked the door again, and Cermaq gave me the opportunity to come back to Canada, yes. With my family this time, yes.
Anyone else? Any other directors' questions? Seeing none, I want to thank Amy and Jamie for coming today, and
Thank you very much for
appreciate
the
your
opportunity.
presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Chair. Item D2, Joanne Kane, regarding biogas plant concerns, and I understand she'll be joined today by Andre Desotel.
Okay.
We could get you a glass of water. Right here.
Thank you. Oh, it looks like I have one. Looks like I have one. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could
My
you
name-
speak into the microphone so everybody listening at home can hear your voice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That sounds better.
Excellent. Thank you.
My name is Joanne Kane, and with me is Andre Deshotel. We represent No Biogas Here, which, as you can tell, is an ever-growing group of residents in the South Cowichan Valley. I think we have over 100 people here today that are part of that group. The focus of our presentation today is the appropriate site selection and land use considerations for large dairy manure and food waste biogas plants. The title is, Does Biogas Belong in a Residential Neighborhood? For purposes of this discussion, we define a residential neighborhood as an area where there are lots of homes that are not on operating farms. Homes where people live. That's a residential neighborhood. For example, an area that has 600 or 700 residential homes within a 2-kilometer area, within a 2-kilometer radius, would fit our definition of a residential neighborhood. This is a picture of the Fraser Valley Biogas facility taken on July 17, 2019. This plant converts 50,000 tons a year of manure and mixed unused food waste into methane gas. A member of our community visited this plant in August. In fact, she took this picture. Here are her comments. The first thing I noticed was the smell. More than a kilometer away from the location, I rolled the windows down and could detect the odor. The flare stack was also lit up, and at that time was very visible even from a distance. As I neared the location, the flame went out, but lit up again approximately a half an hour to 45 minutes later. I managed to get a couple of great photos from the side of the road, but the signs at the entrance of the property made it clear that they were not open to visitors. The closest neighbors appeared to be all large farms. I was able to talk to people at 2 different neighboring farms. Both said the smell varied day by day, but in general was very bad. So bad at times that the windows had to be kept shut. The day I visited was not considered one of the bad days, but it was still quite unpleasant. And just hot off the press, we have comments that have just been posted in the last couple of days from a fellow named Jeff Vanderveen who lives near this plant. I live in Sumas Prairie. I live down the road from Fraser Valley Biogas. The investment in this plant was a huge, huge waste of money. It put the original owner into $8 million of debt. He sold it for pennies on the dollar. It is currently running at full capacity, and the gas is being sold back to Fortis at 12%. The rest of the gas is being blown back into the atmosphere because Fortis isn't willing to pay any more funds back to the owners. It also stinks to high heaven. It should be at least 3 miles from any residence or highway. It's a stupid idea. We don't know Jeff, but we'd like to meet him.
I'm going to take the next one there. Okay.
Do you want the? Nope. Okay.
So what you're going to be seeing now is parts from the Canadian Biogas Industries Guidelines. This is a draft that they produced in July of this year, and it was intended to assist stakeholders in siting, designing, approval, and operations of anaerobic digester facilities that process food and other organic waste materials in Canada. The objectives of this draft and guideline was to inform the proponents to minimize or prevent using buffers and other control measures, the exposure of any person, property, plant, or animal life to adverse effects associated with the operation of food and organic waste anaerobic digesting facilities. So these draft guidelines were just published in July, and they provide considerable information regarding important considerations when selecting a location for biogas plants.
I'd just like to interject here.
Okay, we got to watch the time.
Yep. I just want to interject that nice letter that Josh Larson read from the Biogas Industry Association is kind of a quandary, because their section on site selection that Andre's just going to go over is pretty darn robust. And it certainly doesn't say that you could put it anywhere.
Right, so starting off with their site selection process, they say the operational and visual significance of an anaerobic digester, which we will now call AD, facility on the landscape should be considered when selecting a potential site. An anaerobic digester facility requires activities of an industrial nature, as well as buildings and structures of similar characteristics. For example, during the nighttime, the light from a burning flare may be a nuisance to local residents, and this is their own guidelines as to what you have to be aware of. So the draft guidelines recognize that these biogas plants are of an industrial nature and need to be located in areas that have similar industrial operations and buildings. They should fit into the visual landscape of the area, and consideration should be given to current and potential future development of a residential nature, such as homes, other dwellings, and seniors housing. It is our understanding that an on-farm biogas plant means that a plant where 50% of the inputs are from the farm itself, not trucked in. A plant that has most of its inputs trucked in would not be considered on-farm, but rather a biogas plant of an industrial character. Impacts on local businesses, including restaurants, golf courses, and tourist attractions, need to be considered. The guidelines state that the success of an AD facility depends on acceptance from the local community.
So on odor, we have some excerpts from the Big East Guidelines for selecting suitable sites for biogas plants. Emissions, particularly smell and noise emissions, cannot be avoided. The site has to be selected in view to possible conflicts with neighboring areas. Are there residential areas in the proximity? This should be analyzed in view of the prominent wind direction. Odor and noise emissions respect no boundaries or property lines. Earlier, we mentioned the smell at the Fraser Valley Biogas Facility. Here are a few more quotes from around the world. In England, from the Rothwell plant in Northamptonshire, England, which opened in 2010 and won the Best Anaerobic Digestion Facility Award in the UK in 2012. The smell was strong in our garden, having drifted some half a mile from the A14 over the fields to the east area of Rothwell town. As we drove past the digester at 5:20 p.m. on Sunday, October 7th, the smell was so overwhelming that I started choking. It is so bad I can't drive past it without gagging. Another one from England, from Biffa's Poplars AD facility in Cannock, Staffordshire. Every few days we get the most horrendous smell. It smells like raw sewage. It is absolutely disgusting. We can't open our windows or doors. It's that bad. Nothing they have done has stopped the residents from here suffering. We have lived here 5 years and never had any problems with the landfill. If you have visitors, they say, "What's that smell?" It is embarrassing and making our lives miserable. A lot of people are angry about it. From Hometown Bioenergy Plant in Le Sueur, Minnesota. It is like living next to a giant poop plant, said Katie Turwedo, the closest neighbor to Hometown Bioenergy Plant that began operating in late 2013. From Heartland Biogas Project southeast of LaSalle, Colorado, which opened in 2015 and was shut down in early 2017. I think the population in that area could have probably handled it if every so often when the wind was blowing a certain way there was a bit of an odor. But this was clearly a highly offensive odor that also caused physical problems for some of the residents. That's from Sybil Charvel, Colorado State University Associate Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering.
You've got 2.5 minutes left.
I thought we had 15? No? This says we've been
10.
running 9 minutes, 52 seconds.
10 minutes.
What's that?
10 minutes. Oh, sorry.
All of these plants were not supposed to smell. We were told we had 15 minutes.
Okay.
Continue on, and perhaps the board will introduce a motion to extend the period.
Well, we're going to need more time. Can we ask for that now?
Director Nicholson? Extend it 5 minutes. Seconded by Director Sebring. This requires 2/3 support. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Please continue. You've got 6.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Seabreeze and Fraser Valley biogas plants are the only dairy manure biogas facilities currently operating in BC. They are both surrounded by large farms with no residential development nearby. Additional manure feedstocks is supplied by the adjacent farms. Surrey Biogas, which is a state-of-the-art closed-loop system, converting organic waste to natural gas, is located within an industrial complex zone. So here's the risks. You want to?
You skipped this slide.
Oh, did we skip one?
Yes.
Site selection, all components of the AD facility should be located as far as possible from sensitive receptors, such as a home, dwelling, school, daycare facility, hospital, long-term care facility, elderly housing, place of worship, cemetery, major retail or office establishments, or an environmentally sensitive area. And this is their own guidelines that are saying this. So it doesn't belong in areas where there's high-density homes nearby. So we'll go past that one, and you want to do that one? Or I can just read on. Okay, so the risks, permanent loss of the ALR land. The province of BC has clearly stated that farmland is for farming and agriculture the first priority of the ALR. A recent independent report released by the Minister of Agriculture's Advisory Committee, Revitalizing the ALR and ALC, identified concerns over the amount of land lost from ALR due to text amendment to ALR land. Biogas plants require extensive use of concrete bunkers, pads, tanks, permanently damaging the soil and effectively destroying future farming. The independent report says that recent proposed legislative changes will help stop damaging practices that contaminate farmland and make farms unaffordable for new farmers and threaten the short-term and long-term viability of the ALR. Are we prepared to give up ALR land forever?
You're probably all familiar with this kind of a sign. We have them scattered around the Cowichan Valley for sure and elsewhere. The biogas industry guidelines state that watershed planning and protection of surface and groundwater along with other natural features should be considered in site selection for a biogas plant. The CVRD, as a land use authority, is very concerned about protecting our drinking water resources. Nearby aquifers, streams, and wells should be a primary concern when considering biogas plant approvals.
Biogas risk. Canadian biogas industry guidelines. The potential for uncontrolled releases has led to a number of provinces establishing minimum setback distances from streams, rivers, lakes, oceans, and wetlands to prevent the possibility of unintentional contamination. Sources of potable water should also be protected from potential contamination, and some provincial and local regulations define required setback distances from potable water sources, often as at least 150 meters as a defense against the potential for contamination. Actually, I think we're going to move on with those, okay?
You got about 3.5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, also from the Canadian biogas industry guidelines regarding traffic, on-site and off-site traffic can have an impact on an area surrounding an AD facility. If not actively managed, trucks can generate noise, track mud and waste on and off the site, create dust, deposit litter onto roadways, and be a potential source of odor. A significant increase in traffic volumes, including the potential for queuing of vehicles waiting to enter a site, results in the potential for public conflict. development of a new road network, or the use or modification of an existing one, and the associated costs of these decisions are site selection considerations. Local roads in the Cowichan Valley are generally small, winding, and often in ill repair, with no shoulders, many dog walkers, horse riders, runners, school buses, and pedestrians. Yeah, let's do the conclusion.
So biogas conclusions. Large industry-style biogas plants do not belong on ALR land that could be permanently lost for farming purposes, near ground and surface water resources, near sensitive receptors such as homes, senior residence care homes, and golf courses, in residential areas where noise and odor could impact quality of life, where the road infrastructure is not sufficient. In Europe, there were about 800 reported accidents on biogas plants between 2005 and 2015. The risks are many and the stakes are very high. They include fire, explosion, ground and surface water contamination, air pollution, noxious odors, and methane leaks. These plants do not belong in residential areas. To quote Director Stone, the CVRD is ultimately a land use authority, and as a land use authority, the impacts on local residents must be of primary importance. And we all know that you take this responsibility very seriously, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, both Joanne and Andre. I appreciate your steer of areas that needed to be steered clear from. So thank you very much, and will you take some questions from the board if they have any? And would like to remind the board as well to steer clear of those areas we need to steer clear of. Director Stone.
Well, it's easy for me to say when I don't get to vote on these applications. Just for clarity, you understand the municipal directors cannot vote on electoral land use decisions. So, you know, I appreciate it. And I was going to say I've never seen a group that adept at navigating through some of the challenges. And I will, you know, other than seeing you folks in the yellow shirts, admit my ignorance of the situation there. We have our own land use problems to deal with. But I thank you for the information, and I think it's great information. And to all of you that came out and have your concerns, you know, I absolutely appreciate them. And I know that having known this group of people for long enough, that everybody at this table does appreciate the challenges that come up in land use decisions. So I just wanted to say thank you, and very adept at, and say that it's easy for me to say when I don't get to vote. But thank you so much.
Thank you. And if anyone wants more information, we do have a website that is being updated constantly with factual information as we find it. So thank you.
Excellent. I see no other hands, and I too want to just thank you because this was a challenging topic that we couldn't talk about, and you have helped us and the board in maintaining integrity in our process. And with that, I want to thank you very much, and let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I would certainly invite all of you in the gallery, if you'd like to stay for some of the other scintillating things that we have on our agenda. You are certainly most welcome to, but I think at this point we will just take a 5-minute break. And again, you can stay. Okay, let's call this back to order. Now we're getting to the scintillating part, report of the chairperson. No, just kidding. This will be brief. A number of us and watershed board members and municipal councillors attended a hosted forestry tour on Monday. It, as I said, included numerous directors, councillors, Cowichan watershed board members. I found it to be incredibly informative. There's a whole bunch more science going on in the forest than I thought there was, and found it to be very informative, and I'm glad I went on it. I've been on previous ones. They take you to different sites each time. And who around this table attended that? I had, Okay, would anyone like to make a comment in regards to their thoughts? And we'll start this way, Director Nicholson.
Those slopes are very steep around the lake.
Director Smith?
I think it was an opportunity for us to go and be invited by Mosaic. I thank them very much for inviting us because it did give us an opportunity to look at something at the ground level instead of looking at it from the roadway. And that I really appreciated the invitation. Thank you.
Great. Over to this side, Tim, you weren't there. Director Yanni DiNardo.
I thought you were going to pass me by. You had too many Yanni DiNardos that day. It was, I found it very informative. I have done other tours, but hadn't done a forestry tour. So I thought it was interesting. We had Dr. Shannon Waters there as well. And I thought it was the one part that was very fascinating for me was one little creek had 100 licenses on it. And I hadn't known about that. So it's way up on the steep bank, and then there was all the licenses. So I thought that it was a very good tour, very informative, and they condensed it and spoke in the language that I could understand. Thank you.
Director Salmon? Director Stone?
I got to see where my father-in-law used to work. That was interesting. I sent him a picture up there. He goes, "That's where I used to eat lunch every day." And then I think he was sad he retired. But no, I thought it was pretty fascinating. You know, like my family's worked in the forest industry. My stepdad, my dad, my father-in-law, and many other people in our family. And it was neat to see how I think things have changed since I went out in the bush as a kid with my family. It's definitely a lot more tidy and based on good information, I think. I genuinely sensed a willingness to continue to improve. So there's definitely challenges. There's always that friction between, the private landowners and, the concerns around making sure we preserve our environment. And it's nice to hear that the stewards of that private land seem to have that at front of mind and are open to input. So it was really informative.
Thank you for your comments, and I'm just, it's been a long day, I'm drawing a blank, but the executive director or chair of the Private Managed Forest Lands Council was in attendance as well and had some interesting input. And I guess a final observation is that Mosaic is a firm that is comprised of the former Island Timberlands and the former Timber West, and I still think they're in a bit of an adjustment phase in their organization, but felt pretty positive about their commitment to community and their forestry practices. So found it to be a very worthwhile afternoon spent. And the other item that I'm just make reference to is a number of us will be attending our annual conference at UBCM in a couple of weeks, and look forward to seeing you all there. And for those that might be watching at home or in the audience, that's probably the hardest work that I do all year long. There's tons of meetings and learning opportunities and the like, and it should be some hard work, but maybe a little bit of fun too. So. Director Hackton.
Well, I just had an idea about UBCM, and we saw the Fraser Valley biogas. Maybe we could arrange a tour and check it out.
In all our spare time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll rent a limo for us all.
Perfect. Next item on the agenda, Ms. Legault.
Thank you. To correspondence, item C1, correspondence from Melanie Patino, Community Impact Manager, United Way Central and Northern Vancouver Island, regarding federal Reaching Home Program funding and a memorandum of understanding. And the recommendation for consideration is that the Cowichan Valley Regional District enter into a memorandum of understanding with United Way Central and Northern Vancouver Island in support of the Reaching Home designated community federal funding application.
Director Stone. Seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Next item, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Chair. Item C2, correspondence from Samantha Charlton, Project Manager, Regional Adaptation Program, BC Agriculture and Food Climate Action Initiative. And the recommendation for consideration is that the Cowichan Valley Regional District provide a financial contribution to the BC Agriculture and Food Climate Action Initiative Regional Adaptation Strategies Project in an amount up to $3,000 to assist with workshop costs.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Acton. Any discussion? Director Smith.
Can you please explain to me, maybe the staff financial department can explain where these funds would come from?
Who would like to take that one? Ms. Weiner? No?
Apparently it's coming out of our pockets.
Mr. Carruthers? No?
Go ahead. So that would be at the option of the committee. There is additional funds left over in the regional grant and aid function, or if there's a particular service that this would be most aligned with, then potentially in that service.
Mr. Carruthers,
Thank you,
can you
Mr. Chair.
suggest
We
an
would-
appropriate pot?
We would cover those funds out of the board expenses. It's a regional initiative, so we'll take it out of general government board expenses.
That's kind of what I thought. Seeing no other hands, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. That motion carries. Ms. Legault, I guess we're on number 10 now.
Thank you. So committee commission reports. Item CR1, report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of August 21st, 2019.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report and recommendation of Electoral Area Services of August 21st is the recommendation, the development permit application number DPI8C12 for a 4-lot subdivision at 1231 Hutchison Road, PID 004-832-566 be approved. I move that.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? See none opposed, that motion carries. Next item, CR2.
It's the report and recommendations of the Regional Services Committee meeting of August 28th.
Director Stone.
Thank you. Number one, that the Chemainus Valley Cultural Arts Society's request for a letter of support be referred to the Arts and Culture Division for action. Number two, that the natural hazard risk tolerance policy as attached to the Environmental Services Division's May 13th, 2018 staff report be approved. Number three, to pursue a meeting with the Ministry of Environment Assistant Deputy Minister, and further that staff engage in discussions with Cobble Hill Aquifer Interagency Task Group and local stakeholders, including Cobble Hill Improvement District, with respect to funding ongoing monitoring of the Cobble Hill Aquifer, and that staff report back to the Regional Services Committee meeting of October 23rd, 2019 with respect to ongoing monitoring and associated costs. Number four, that 2 letters be sent to the Minister of Environment Climate Change Strategy as follows. 1, to provide feedback on the Plastics Action Plan policy consultation paper for proposed amendments to the BC recycling regulations, and 2, to request further amendments to BC recycling regulation as identified in the staff report to the August 28, 2019 Regional Services Committee.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, before this is
Your
seconded.
point?
I have a question about recommendation 1. Do I have to pull it to have my question answered, or is there an opportunity for discussion?
Ms. Legault, how would you like to handle that? The question's fine.
Okay.
Hasn't been moved yet.
So I can ask my question. It
Please
just-
proceed, Director Sebring.
I was just wondering, it says here be referred to the Arts and Culture Division for action. I was under the impression that the letter of support was going to come from the board chair. I'm just wondering why that goes to that division. Are they sending the letter, or what, I mean, what's actually going on here?
Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For action, I would certainly take it that the Arts and Culture Division would draft a letter and be in consultation with the board chair on that letter. The Arts and Culture Division is already aware of this request and already starting to draft a letter.
Okay, thank you, got my clarification.
Mr. Stone,
I'll
or
move
Director
those
Stone,
items.
you moved those items, and seconded by alternate Director Haim. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Legault, CR3.
Thank you, Chair. The report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of September 4th, 2019.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recommendations 1 through 4. 1, grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Cowichan Therapeutic Writing Association for a writer scholarship to assist clients who faced financial hardship because they no longer qualify for assistance once they reach the age of 18. 2, that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to the CMS Food Bank Society for the purchase of food and fresh vegetables for food bank recipients. 3, that a 5-year agreement with the Stanamis First Nations ending December 31st, 2023 for fire prevention, suppression, and emergency response be approved. 4, that the letter sent to the City of Duncan, Town of Ladysmith, Town of Lake Cowichan, and Municipality of North Cowichan councils requesting support in the form of a resolution for the Cowichan Valley Regional District to apply for and administer grant funding for the Union of British Columbia Municipalities to prepare a regional housing needs report on behalf of the electoral areas and municipalities within the region. I move those.
Seconded by Director Stone. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can continue.
We've got hands. Request to pull item 6. So that will be, got that?
Yeah, 5, 7, and 8.
Correct. And Director
Electoral
Sebring,
area-
microphone, please. Director Sebring.
Oh, sorry.
Electoral area directors only vote on this, following under Part 14. So 5, the development permit application for DP 18E08 for the new industrial development at Lot 7 Boys Road, PID 000-272-256 be approved. And then 7, the development variance application number DVP 19G01 11101 Chemainus Road to vary electoral area G Saltaire Gulf Island zoning bylaw 2524 section 3.24 to reduce the setback from the shoreline retaining wall from 15 meters to. Oh, you knocked
Sorry,
me
I
off here, okay.
knocked you
Reduce the setback from the sea for a proposed shoreline retaining wall from 15 meters to 0.1 meters be approved. 8, 1, development permit application number DP 19A 10 PID 001-170-465 be approved. And 8.2, the general manager of the Land Use Services be authorized to approve minor revisions to the permit DP 19A10 in accordance with the intent of the development permit guidelines of the official community plan bylaw number 3510.
Move those items.
I move those items.
Seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Item
Number
6.
6, that prior to consideration of the adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 4289 for application number 02-F-17RS PID 009-845-526 restrictive covenants be prepared and registered on title with all associated costs for the covenant preparation and registration to be borne entirely by the applicant to secure the following: A, design and details for the static water source with a minimum capacity of 10,000 gallons prepared by a qualified professional for the purpose of firefighting to the satisfaction of the CVRD Public Safety Division. B, dedication of a 7-meter wide public trail corridor along the east parcel boundary to the satisfaction of the CVRD Parks and Trails Division. C, a habitat protection and tree retention plan prepared by a registered professional biologist to secure critical habitat area and wildlife corridors. D, a wildlife urban interface assessment be completed by a qualified professional, an assessment report provided to the CVRD. And E, a restriction on future development to a maximum of 3 lots. And then 2, the original referrals for bylaw number 4289 to BC Transit, Cowichan Tribes, Island Health, Ministry of Transportation, and Satlam Volunteer Fire Department be accepted. And 3, that a public hearing be waived for the application number 01-F-17RS in accordance with the section 4642 of the Local Government Act, as a proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the Cowichan-Coxsila Official Community Plan.
Move that item.
I do.
Seconded by? Seconded by Director Salmon. Discussion. Director Nicholson.
I would like to amend this motion so that at number 3, a public hearing be scheduled as opposed to waived. And I'd like to speak to that if I have a seconder.
Seconded by Director Acton. Director Nicholson.
So if you recall, this application is to do with a large forestry lot on Lake Cowichan Road. And this, we've had a Satlam Local Area Planning Committee who have been reviewing the policy for the official community plan for that area. And in general, the notion is that there should not be further subdivision of forestry designated lands. The existing OCP also has a minimum of 80 hectares. And what is being proposed is I think it is not clear that it is consistent with the OCP and that there really should be a public hearing associated with it. They want to move from forestry to forestry slash residential, but in effect it's taking it out of potential forestry land. The conversion, the policy in the OCP, existing OCP states that a conversion would be okay with if it's poor forest growth capabilities and if it's in proximity to conflicting land uses, none of it which apply in this particular case, I would say. And in addition, the third policy that is explicit is about the loss of carbon sequestration. And so given that the community in their work on the OCP review have indicated that they think that forestry land should no longer be subdivided into smaller lot, rural residential, I think we really should take it back out to the community for their response on this particular application. So that's why I would like to see this particular motion amended.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions, and well, one is on the, I'm sorry, I can't, or I don't remember it reading like this. Number 6E says a restriction on future development to a maximum of 3 lots. So does that mean those 3 lots can be divided into 3, or is it a max? Like, so will it come back in the future saying it's kind of ambiguous? That's my first question. As a covenant.
I don't believe we have any, oh, we do. Ms. Chirolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The intent of the condition is to ensure that there would be no further subdivision beyond the proposed lots.
Okay. And that's clear in the covenant. That's just me not understanding properly. Okay. And as to Director Nicholson's request. I guess my question is, if it was to go to public hearing, what would be the additional time it would take for that to happen?
Ms. Terrell.
Mr. Chair, I'm unable to provide an absolute date for the timing of the public hearing. There are minimum statutory requirements for notification, obviously. So as little as 3 weeks to 6 weeks would be in that window.
Follow-up?
So overall, since the application came forward, it's going to add, is it a substantial amount of time that it would add to their application?
So through the chair, the requirement for posting for public hearing are similar to the requirements for posting the waiver notice. So the timing is shortened because you don't actually have to hold the public hearing. So there's significantly less staff resources that are required for the waiver. That's the distinction.
And I've got myself on the list and feel compelled to speak to this amendment to the recommended resolution. And we often lament the length of time that we spend on applications and the process that is involved here. And I can attest to the fact that there has been significant work with staff on this file, and that there's been significant efforts made by the applicant to work with staff to curtail the original application to meet the needs of the official community plan. And that's part of the rationale as to why the why the public hearing is being waived, or is recommended to be waived, is it meets the official community plan as it sits. And one of the challenges that we often face, and it comes up with every new board, is that when you have in-stream applications and you've got a process for reviewing an official community plan, do you put those applications on hold, or do you consider the information in an OCP review that hasn't been adopted by the board yet? And in fairness and in consistency with our process, we have always erred on the side of applying the law that is on the books today, not one that may be approved at a future date. So with some of that and the fulsome discussion that we had at committee, and this recommendation was endorsed to go forward at committee, I will be opposing the amendment, and I would encourage the other electoral area directors on this to defeat this amendment. Thank you. Director Nicholson.
You know, I think in the spirit of transparency, when things are in a gray area, it is always the wise thing to check in with the community. It may add 6 more weeks to a process that's gone on since however many years this applicant began. But you know what? I think the community deserves it, and it's our job to make sure that we are understanding what the community needs and wants.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see no harm in accepting that this would go to public hearing if it's not gonna add very much time to the process. And like Director Nicholson stated, it will give some full transparency in an area where Area E's OCP has been put on hold because of our harmonization, so I'd like to support them in that, and they've continuously come here and asked us to finish their OCP, so this is just a way to respect that we didn't actually concede to that request, but we are still listening to the community, and it's just it could be an hour affair and no one shows up, and then we know we made the right decision.
Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. I have faith in Director Nicholson's judgment as to what's best for her community, so I'll be supporting the amendment.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do remember going through an OCP process, and it is a long process and a lot of community meetings. And in the meantime, while we were still having our community meetings, we had applications go through, and I was not allowed to, they were not allowed to be withheld. They had to continue, we had to do our regular, normal state of business. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it works. So I will not be voting for this amendment.
Director Kuhn.
I'm not in favor of the amendment either. I think it would be just an unnecessary delay.
Alternate Director Haim.
Supposedly this has been going on for a long period of time. I don't see the delay as being huge. Certainly with regards to the idea of a public hearing, when it comes to that, the various acts allow for it. I'd vote for it. I'd rather have that than somebody looking at a document and saying it matches or doesn't match in that regard.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to, I think, Ms. Chirolf and pose the question along the lines of what Director Yanni DiNardo, as far as process goes, if an application is made and considered and under a current zoning or official community plan, and the plan changes during the course of that being processed, isn't the applicant afforded the ability to have the official community plan apply when at time of application as opposed to a new one that's considered after the fact?
Through the chair, so the Local Government Act requires that all works undertaken by a local government or all bylaws adopted following the adoption of an official community plan must be consistent with the plan. So any bylaw adopted after an OCP is in place must be consistent with that OCP.
I don't think I worded my question properly.
I'm happy to provide further clarification if I didn't answer the question that you're asking.
My question is when an application is made for a zoning amendment or under an official community plan, it's the one that's in force that is considered, not the one that is pending, that applies to the application. So the applicant is afforded the ability and the privilege of having his application considered under the current in-use zoning bylaw or an official community plan, correct?
Mr. Chair, you're absolutely correct. So there may be a pending OCP. You would apply the current OCP, which is the bylaw in force.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Is everyone clear on the intent of the amendment? Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if this was to go to public hearing then, and the community was obviously opposed to it, would it come back and we would have an amendment to the current OCP, or is it really, or do we just proceed as usual?
Ms. Chirolf.
So through the chair, the board has full discretion as to whether or not to adopt a rezoning bylaw. You also have discretion to suggest or recommend that an OCP be amended in conjunction with a rezoning application. You have full discretion. You're not required to.
Thank you. Everyone's clear on the question? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is a 5-4, so the amendment carries. You got those names? Director Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if the board would entertain moving the unfinished business up now?
We haven't finished this item.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
To the main motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Director Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for missing that. I wonder if we could entertain moving the unfinished business about the transit for the youth up now. I know, most of you probably do know, but Ms. McPherson has recently been honored by the province for her many years of dedicated service and volunteering, and I'm sure she's got somewhere, she's doing that early in the morning, and she's had to come back today, probably on her bicycle. She looks a little sleepy to me. So I'm wondering if the board would just move that up now, because there's quite a few things left, and I'm not sure how quickly a couple of them might go.
Well, what's the will of the board? Okay, chair's discretion to do that, so what item number is
It's
that?
CR6, I believe.
CR6. Right.
Oh, right, I didn't see it there. I thought it was unfinished business, which,
And Mr. Chair, before the motion is made, I'd move that we pull number 1, because it is a group motion as it presented on the agenda.
And I gather there's going to be some changes to that. So Director McGonigal,
Thank
would
you.
you please report to us on the meeting from today and pull 1, because we
From
have a
CR6, he is asked to pull number 1.
Yes.
There is only one. Oh, no, my gosh.
Okay, just to recap, we're moving forward CR6 to be considered now. We're pulling number 1, and I'm asking Director McGonigal to move 2 through 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Community Services Committee report recommends as follows: that the recommendation to waive a requirement for 5% park dedication under Section 510 of the Local Government Act for the proposed 5-lot subdivision of Lot 26, District Lot 201, Malahat District, Plan BIP 78459, PID 026-226-537, in Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, be denied. 3, that the request for a BC Hydro aerial easement, inclusive of other services across lands to be dedicated to the regional district as fee simple parkland as part of the proposed subdivision of 1590 Cowichan Bay Road, be denied. That an application be submitted to the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, Fire Smart Community Funding and Support Program for a $150,000 grant to fund a training program to develop fuel management prescription plans and to complete fuel management treatments as outlined in the Parks and Trails Division staff report dated August 28th, 2019. 5 has 3 parts. Part 1, that the recommendations contained in the Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake Village Area Park Playground Review 2019 report to the September 11th, 2019 Community Services Committee meeting be endorsed. Part 2, that the following projects be funded from the remaining capital funds allocated for playground replacement in the 2019 budget for Function 232 Shawnigan Lake Community Parks. A, $15,000 for installation of playscape-oriented improvements at Glen Park. B, $20,000 for replacement of the existing playground with playscape, naturescape-oriented improvements at Old Mill Park. And C, $14,725,000 for picnic area and accessibility improvements at Old Mill Park. And 3, that the Old Mill Park project commence while community engagement with the Glen neighborhood is undertaken to develop ideas for Glen Park project.
Move those items. Thank you. Seconded by Director Acton. Any discussion on 2 through 5? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Could I have the extra microphones turned off, please? Director Yanni DiNardo. And before we go to reading 1, we have a agreed upon new resolution that I believe you have all had presented to you. Director McGonigal.
So with that, I would move the new proposed resolution from Community Services Committee that 200 conventional service transit tickets be given to the Earth Guardians Cowichan Valley at no charge for students within the Cowichan Valley Regional District to participate in climate awareness activities on September 20th, 2019. I'll move that one.
I think Director Wilson was going to second that one. Any discussion on that item? Director Kuhn, or pardon me, Director Marsh, you had your hand up. Were you just seconding? Director Kuhn on the motion.
Yes, I'm not going to support this motion because I do have an objection to getting kids involved in politics, and this is a political issue, and I just don't. Kids should be left on their own. They shouldn't be kind of steered in any one direction. So, thank you.
Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to provide the board with some information subsequent to this coming forward this afternoon. So I had the opportunity to have a conversation with the school district. They have a couple messages for the board. They would like to express their thanks for a safe opportunity if students choose to participate. They would also like to express that School District 79 is neither encouraging nor discouraging this activity and is leaving it up to students and their families. In regards to tickets versus a free transit day, which was a conversation earlier today, I'd like to note that facilities and transit staff note that there are complications with free transit days in that marketing would be difficult for a situation like that. So they are recommending tickets as part of this resolution. Thank you.
Director Marsh.
So I haven't, since I was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8, seen the kind of level of youth involvement in wanting to change the world that we saw in the 60s and the early 70s. And I think that it's exciting that our youth are wanting to do this. And I do know that this was a youth-led program. And they chose maybe more than one person, but they have chose a very able mentor who has lived and walked this talk for as long as I've known her. And so I don't think that we are trying to politicize children. I mean, politics is personal, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you have an opinion. And if it's an opinion about something like this, well, if you want to call it political, that's okay, but I trust that our youth are smart enough to think for themselves, and this is their future. And they are, as we know through Mayor Staples in her other work, they're frightened. And I think that this might be giving them hope to get to gather together. And I understand they've been doing it for several years, and I'm very grateful for Ms. McPherson to coming here. And I think that it's pretty clear that it's okay for us to do this, and the school district is not concerned about any kind of problems, and I heartily support this, and I'm grateful for them to speak out. And I think that we've seen through, well, she's now, I believe, 16, youth, Greta Thunberg, how much a young person can do if they're impassioned, and I just think that our youth deserve, as the school district had said, a safe way to get to this event and home. And I think we owe them that. If this is what they've been doing, we want them to be safe.
Director Sebring, to the motion on the floor, please.
To the motion on the floor, I won't be supporting this. I hate to sound like the grumpy old guy, but this is a Friday. The kids belong in school. If this was a Saturday event, I'd be all over this. But, you know, I find it telling that the school district is neither for or against. They're trying to remain neutral. I frankly find that a little bit puzzling because they have a responsibility to provide education to the kids, and if that's an educational day, then that's where the kids belong. This is a timing issue for me, not a politicizing kids or anything like that. I'm fully supportive of them expressing themselves, but there's a time and a place. And a school day on Friday when they should be in class is not the place.
Thank you, Director Sebring. Director Staples.
Just to add a bit of context, the last youth day that they had, I was asked to come by the youth guardians, and the majority of the kids that I'm aware of, there were many people from the school district there, including teachers, making sure that the kids got back and forth safely. This is a youth-led event. This is a call to action worldwide. And the youth went back to school after the event, and they did come at lunchtime, and as they have tried to draw us to what they're trying to ask for is that, part of their education is actually being involved and informed, and they are, and they don't necessarily feel that we are as well informed as they, and they are asking us to pay attention to them. And so I'm grateful for this board for putting this motion forward to support that in a way that we can. And I hope that we begin to listen. And as Greta, and I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, I believe it's Thunberg, says in her book of speeches that I just picked up the other day when I was out, she asks that when she's speaking to elected officials, is my mic on? Can you hear me? And yes, we do hear you.
Director Marsh to close. Director McGonigal.
I'd just like to thank staff for contacting the school district on some of the questions we had at the early committee, and appreciate that.
Going to call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? We have Director Smith, Kuhn, Sebring opposed. It's not generally appropriate. If you want to say thank you, please make it quickly.
I just want to say thank you very much to staff and all of the directors who were here earlier today and heard my request, and I really appreciate Ms. Earls and all of them. Thank you so much.
And we thank you for all you do. Thank you very much. Next item, back to CR4. CR4, that's Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Chair. CR4, report and recommendations of the Special Cowichan Community Centre Commission meeting of September 5th, 2019.
Director Nicholson. Microphone, please.
The Special Cowichan Community Centre Commission meeting of September 5th recommends that the Cowichan Community Centre's arena chiller replacement capital project for approximately $415,000 with the construction and equipment install in 2020 be approved. That the pre-budget approval of the 2020 budget for function 423 Cowichan Community Centre be given to include $415,000 for the arena chiller replacement capital project, and that the procurement timeline for the Cowichan Community Centre's arena chiller replacement capital project, allowing for an request for quotation to be issued by September 20th, 2019, and the anticipated corresponding contractor award in October 2019, with the install date being early summer 2020, be approved.
Move those items. Seconded by Director Sebring. Any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. That motion carries. CR5, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Chair. Report and recommendations of the Kerry Park Recreation Commission meeting of August 27th, 2019.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendations for the Kerry Park Recreation Commission meeting of August 27th, 2019 are as follows: that a 10-year lease with Mill Bay Community League beginning September 1st, 2019 for property located on Wilkinson Road, legally described as PID 009497722 Parcel B, DD 45704-1 of Section 3 and 4, Range 8, Shawnigan District, except parcel number 1, DD 90545-I, and accept that part in Plan 31762 as per the terms outlined in the staff report to the Kerry Park Recreation Center Commission of August 27th, 2019. Closed session be approved.
Moving that. Seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? There's none opposed, that motion carries. Ms. Legault. 212 staff reports, it looks like.
Thank you. The next item, SR1, staff report from the Finance Division regarding the 2020 budget public meeting dates. And the recommendation for consideration is that the 2020 budget public meeting calendar is attached to the September 3rd, 2019 report from the Finance Division be endorsed.
Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. That motion carries. Next item, Ms. Legault.
Thank you. SR2, staff report from the Community Planning Division regarding the Municipality of North Cowichan bylaw number 3761. The recommendation presented for consideration is that the CVRD advise the
Mr. Chair, excuse me. I'm going to recuse myself from this one for reasons that I've given before, that I have a non-driving membership in the Vancouver Island Karting Association, which meets at the racetrack, and a previous donation that I managed to get from the track to the Cobble Hill Fair.
Thank you, Ms. Legault. You've noted that. Wait for Director Wilson to leave the room. And can we continue?
And the proposed recommendation is that the CVRD advise the Municipality of North Cowichan that CVRD electoral area residents have raised concerns with proposed zoning amendment bylaw number 3761 in the following subject areas. 1, noise. Given the low level of ambient noise in the Satlam rural area, the sound of vehicles using the track is very disruptive to many residents, even though by urban standards the sound levels coming from the track may be low. Up to 12 days per year would be exempted from any noise limits. Plans for engineered noise mitigation have not been provided, and penalties for noise violations are low and unlikely to result in compliance. 2, environment, loss of additional forested lands, the encouragement of motor vehicle use in an era where the effects of these activities are known to be deleterious to the environment. Fire risk could be increased by on-track activities. Aesthetic concerns about the appearance of noise mitigation walls proposed in the application. Possible impacts on particulate tire debris on fish fry, and preservation of the Menzies Creek riparian area.
Turn to Director Nicholson first.
I would like to move the recommendation with some changes to it, and I have.
Just before we proceed to a recommendation and discussion on a recommendation, is there consideration of the board to have some general discussion in advance of a resolution on the floor? I'm seeing some nodding. Okay, I think that would be more than appropriate. And is this worthwhile to go round table on this, or do we want to set up a speakers list? Well, okay, so tell you what I'm going to do. I've got 3 people on the speakers list, and then we can possibly go round table. I've got Director Nicholson, Stone, and Sebring. So Director Nicholson, I guess we're going to a speakers list. Nicholson, Stone, Sebring, Kuhn, Yanni DiNardo. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I think that you heard tonight Mariah Wolliner very eloquently described the issues that Satlam residents have faced with the existing motorsport facility. And at the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting last week, I was tasked to work. Actually, it was on Wednesday. It wasn't last week. That was the problem. It was on Wednesday, and I was tasked to work with Mike Tippett on putting down the points that would reflect the community's concerns. We didn't have enough time between Wednesday evening and the time the report needed to be upstairs, so it would be on the agenda for me to actually review the material that Mike has put together, and so I have a number of additions that I would like to, or changes, edits that I would like to make to it, which I have provided for you in the title that says Amendment to SR2 Recommendation, September 2019. This one. This one? No, not the dark one. This one.
That was my question, which one of the three were we working from? So have we had anything moved yet? No. Okay, so the suggestion from Director Nicholson is this one that's just, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not really quite sure where to start. I have to say I was more than a little bit surprised at even the language in the resolution that was originally proposed. It talks about the notion that CVRD electoral area residents have raised concerns with this, and believe me, I get that. We are hearing that at North Cowichan. We have a public hearing coming up. We have booked the Cowichan Theatre for the public hearing. When we, as a local government, send a land use matter to an adjacent local government for comment, we do so generally in the expectation that it will be staff comment. Is this land use consistent with some of, in this case, the regional district's land use objectives? I mean, we were looking for technical analysis. You know, the CVRD has completed an industrial land use survey. It would have been helpful to understand how proposed land use changes in this application might fit within or not fit within the broader goals or objectives of the needs identified in that industrial land use report. The CVRD has an economic development function. It would have been useful to see how this fits with that. Instead, what we received, instead of a technical analysis, we received, frankly, a political analysis. And in a way, that's fair. There's concerns. We totally acknowledge that. We're hearing from Satlam residents every day. Believe me, we're hearing from Satlam residents every day. I'm not sure that this is the appropriate vehicle for the Satlam residents to make their concerns known. They're making them known to us, and the proper vehicle for that is the public hearing, and the proper vehicle for that is the input that we're getting now in advance of the public hearing, which is all going into that public hearing binder. You know, Director Stone raised an issue earlier today when the biogas people were here, and he said, you know, it's all nice and well that we get to listen to you, but I don't even get to vote on your stuff. That's part of the reality, is we don't get to vote on regional district land use matters in the political sense. Now, I understand, you know, earlier today we talked about people staying in their lanes, and that was enclosed and it was in a different context. And I acknowledge that there was a previous incident where North Cowichan went a little bit outside of our lane. And that was with respect to the Cowichan Bay still pending rezoning issue. I deliberately tried to stay out of that discussion. My council passed a motion, which, because council passed it, I have to support, but I voted against it at our table, urging the CVRD to have some kind of environmental study done on.
Director Sebring, can you really be careful with your comments around this, because it's still.
No, I'm just talking about the principles of governance here. That's
I understand. I just don't want you to slip out of your lane again.
All right, fair game. I mean, so there has been some cross-pollination. Procedurally, I don't think it was proper in that instance, and frankly, I'm a little bit concerned in this instance. I will acknowledge, because earlier today I talked to our staff and I said, can I please have a look at the letter that went from our staff to Mr. Carruthers with respect to this referral? And that letter included the word stakeholders, which does open it up a little more broadly. So I would, and I'm not going to make a motion right now, but as we move forward, you know, if the board decides to accept the amendments from Director Nicholson, fair game. But at some point, before this discussion is over, I'm also going to move a referral back to staff so that we get the technical input, which is what I believe we were actually looking for, and have those forwarded back to North Cowichan before our public hearing on October 1st. So that's just where we are. And let me add one other thing. The lands in question are zoned heavy industry. Right now, if the current owner were to shut down, we could put a debarker there, we could put a planer mill there, we could put any number of heavy industrial uses there. The issue would not come to North Cowichan Council, and it certainly wouldn't come to the CBRD for a referral. That's the reality of what we're dealing with on those lands. I just want to remind you all of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sebring. And just so that we're all clear on how I'm hoping we'll proceed, and this is based on feedback from some of our prior workshops, this board has made it clear that sometimes we want to be able to talk about it without having a motion on the floor and being hamstrung by that. So that's the intent of what I'm doing here, is moving forward so that everyone can feel able to express their thoughts around this. And I will go to Director Nicholson first when all the general comments are done, and we'll go from there. So I've got Director Kuhn, Yanni, Donardo, Acton. Does anyone else want to get in on this? Director Kuhn.
I've mentioned earlier that I'm not in favor of our board expressing an opinion on a development in North Cowichan. I do that for several reasons. One is I'm afraid we're opening a can of worms here, because if we do this now, and with all due respect to Director Sebring's comments, if we expect, or if he expects a detailed analysis from us, that's even more involvement. So then the question comes up, well, what is going to happen if we turn it the other way around? What requests are we going to get from or what comments are we going to get from North Cowichan? So, but another issue that I have that bugs me is, this is a very strange situation. Our board is supposed to make comments, and yet 3 members of the North Cowichan Council are on our board. I mean, it's very strange as far as I'm concerned. So, in essence, they're voting on a letter that's going to be issued to them. I find that weird. And to me, I understand the request was issued to the board. It wasn't issued to EAS, and yet it should only be concerning EAS, because Ladysmith wouldn't be involved in that. And it shouldn't be involved, because only Area E is the neighboring area that is of concern. Ladysmith has nothing to do with that, yet they're going to vote on this. So to me, this opens a whole can of worms, and I'm just detrimentally opposed to this, because where is it going to end up in the future? So my take on that is, if the director from Area E faces a lot of flack, or gets the response of a lot of flack, because her area citizens are affected by the noise and whatnot, then I would suggest that she attends a council meeting in North Cowichan, and she attends the public hearing that's supposedly coming up, and brings her reservations forward, because it's her area citizens. I cannot see the board issuing a letter where the recipients, where 3 of the recipients are sitting on the board. It makes no sense to me. And as I said earlier, I just don't want to get involved in this whole game, because where is this going to end up in the future?
Point of order, just
Your point.
because, and I don't know actually if it's a point of order, but I'm just going to see if it is. Is it possible to refer this to the EAS?
It's already been to the EAS.
It
Request
already
is from the
was.
board, the
So-
request is from comments and the board to provide a referral response.
Okay, I'll wait till it's my turn then.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually agree with Director Kuhn. I thought no comment would have been beneficial, but I thought that we was going to Director Nicholson for her comments because it was connected to her area. So I misunderstood our own resolution, and I was the chair. So I was a little confused on where that went, but the area director of that area is able to be at a public hearing, is able to speak for her residents, and was in the past as well. I think this does set dangerous precedents. I think we've already seen that from North Cowichan at this table already. And I can't support this. I think that we should be doing things differently and not in this way. Thank you.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to assure Director Sebring that the conversation of getting out of our lane was a big one, and we did not want to do that. And I actually thought that our recommended resolution, because this is not what we came up with, was going to be a little bit more of just, we'd like to let you know that there are people in the adjacent electoral area that do have some concerns, so we want to make sure that their concerns were heard. And because I even stated as well, like, there's some pros and cons to the racetrack. And so I didn't want to comment on that application because, like you said, I have no decision-making in that except to the point of if I show up as a member of the public. And you made some good comments about giving some information on by Economic Development Cowichan. Yeah, that would be really helpful, and that is a function that you help pay for, so you should be, I guess obviously your letter wasn't specific enough what you're asking for, because generally the ones that I've seen that come to land use planning are very vague and just say, like, how do you feel about this? Does it go against your community plan, or do you have any comment on it? And it's pretty vague. And usually staff gets that one and they say, no, we have no problem with it, and it goes back, obviously more eloquently than I've stated. But in the past, it has happened where Area B, where staff has responded for Area B and said, no, we don't have any issue with that. And then somehow I found out about it and went, no, wait a minute, we do have issue. And we filled the community center. And so in instances like that, I guess my question is, what is the process? Because even in those instances, it didn't come to the board for a board letter. It got worked out amongst staff to staff, I guess, saying, wait a minute, the community does have an issue. Can you slow down a second? We need to revisit this and have a community meeting. And so I guess, can we step back a minute and actually bring this back to staff and have it dealt with more clearly and at a staff level?
Do you want to answer to that question? Who am I going to turn to? Mr. Carruthers is going to take that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Typically, when staff receive referrals, they respond, as Director Acton indicated. We have had also electoral area directors express concerns with the fact that staff have simply responded interest unaffected or something to that effect, when in fact there were. Staff were acutely aware of the sensitivity of this issue and I think responded accordingly. I would suggest that staff need some direction from the electoral area services directors as to how they wish staff to handle these types of referrals, so that there is some reflection of local political interests in these, because it's not always simply a technical response. And so I'm going to suggest that we refer this to a future ASC meeting to discuss with the area directors. In the meantime, it would be appropriate for the board to direct this back to staff if they so choose, with direction with respect to how we would typically respond to a referral like this.
A follow-up, but we haven't had, everyone hasn't had their opportunity
Okay.
to speak,
So follow-up, thank you, that's clear, and if everybody wanted to, I would be willing to create a motion to the fact that it would go back to staff, for staff to actually contact the municipality of North Cowichan and get better clarity on what kind of input they're looking for, I think would be appropriate, and then for that to come back to electoral area services. Because we're gonna just go around and around in electoral area services with this.
So just for clarity in my mind, that I've already laid out what I had gleaned from the board, we would go round, or not round table, but we would hear input. I would go to Director Nicholson next. Just remind everyone that a referral motion is in order at any point once a motion is on the floor, takes precedence over the motion on the floor. And I just got handed a note that response deadline is September 23rd.
Mr. Chair,
So,
point of order on that.
point of order.
I spoke to staff before I came here today, and they are fully cognizant that the board would have to look at this again 2 weeks from today, which is still before October 1st, and they're happy to receive the input before October 1st.
We're at UBCM. There's no meeting in 2 weeks. Has to be dealt with tonight. Do we have another yes? But it can't go to the board. So it could go to electoral area services, but that resolution could not be endorsed by the board.
I'm just saying 23rd is not a hard deadline, that's all.
Fair enough. So, well, let me pose this in your point of order that we're sort of wandering down a rabbit hole on. If we considered this at electoral area services, all went away to UBCM, came back, our first meeting is the 9th of October. Is that going to be way past? That's way past. So we are dealing with this tonight, everyone. Director Acton, that concludes your remarks. Director Staples.
To just wait, I'll just maybe
Can I
come
go to
back on the
next
list in a
person,
minute.
come back to you
Please
then?
do.
So we're actually going into second times around, so I will go to Director, you haven't spoken yet, Director Stone.
Yeah, I don't envy anybody in this situation, North Cowichan, Special Electoral Area Director Nicholson. You know, what an awkward situation, but, you know, there's a lot of realities here. I read this, which was the, suggested amendment to the resolution, and I think, there's some concerns around things like, from my perspective, about making inferences that are not really provable from a referral point of view. Noise violations, penalties are low and unlikely to result in compliance. There's probably a way to say we encourage, appropriate penalties and enforcement on, penalties for noise violations. When you're looking at a referral, I think it's best to provide constructive, not just what your complaints would be. But I think the spirit of what's intended here reflects what, Director Nicholson's been dealing with in our community, and obviously it's been a long-standing issue. But on the flip side, I got to, because we have a pole mill in Ladysmith in an interface area, and frankly, it's a nightmare for us, because as a heavy industrial use, I would contend that a pole mill firing up at 5:30 in the morning, as per the heavy industrial bylaw, is a pretty detrimental impact on neighboring residential areas, and it's not just across a highway or 1 or 3 or 5 kilometers away. So it's difficult, right? And there's Saltaire residents there that are affected by it. And once those things are in place, years later, they're still having negative impacts on the community, right? And we work with the proponents to mitigate, much like, North Cowichan and CVRD people have been trying to work with the racetrack. But keep in mind that the permitted uses there could be what seemingly, having, observed the track in operation and the pole mill, I'm not sure that some of the alternative uses that wouldn't require any permission, rezoning, or referral wouldn't be worse.
Thank you. I've got myself, Director Staples, Marsh, and Sebring. Anyone else wants on that list? Okay. This is a question in my mind about good governance, best practices, it is very much about the concerns expressed by community members in Satlam. And I'm concerned about the blurred lines, and we've had people speak to us about, of course you should jump in and communicate and express the concerns that the residents have expressed to us. Director Sebring has been quite eloquent and clear on the opportunities for community members to provide input to the decision makers. Now, just a little bit of context. When we were considering this at Electoral Area Services, one of the first kicks at this had reference to recommendations about denial and that sort of thing, and we recoiled at that thought, or a number of us recoiled at the thought that we would refer or suggest to another jurisdiction that we have an impact in their decision making. So from where I sit, from a best practices, good governance perspective, I think that good, usable data feedback, if we're going to give it, should be of that nature. And I'm just going to use as an example, the CVRD owns property at the corner of Drinkwater and Highway 18. And we've got plans for use of that. It's industrial, and when the initial water line was put through to come in the back of that property, it was totally inadequate for our future development of our industrial site there, which is a great site for that kind of activity. I think if our staff were making comment, they would make recommendations as to ensuring that services that are going to be provided as part of this rezoning meet the needs of people along the roadsides and that sort of thing. So Director Sebring's analysis of this being very political-oriented commentary is quite accurate. And I'm not sure that we want to start the to and fro and back and forth of political commentary between jurisdictions. I don't think that helps us as far as best practices and good governance in the long run. But it's what this board decides to do is what I'll end up signing or not. So with that, I will go to Director Staples if you have comment now.
I just think back to some of the discussions that we've had around, what are the whole team conversation we had earlier today about, there's often times where there's one area in the region that we're talking about and we're speaking to support something that's come in from that area. And if this is only, I don't know if I know other areas where people express very similar concerns, but they don't have the direct impact that they have on Director Nicholson's area. And so I feel torn because I understand and I hear what's being said, and at the same time, these are very real concerns to the people that live here. And all we're doing is providing, we've been asked to provide an opportunity to voice the concerns that are being heard. The way that this came from the EAC, again, from listening to everyone here and reading this, assume that there was a very robust discussion to get you to this point. And so we ask for referrals. We're having a discussion about this because Duncan was asked for referrals. And while I wish there was a way that the EAC would be the one having this discussion without us here and being able to, and this is what I'm still trying to figure out about how all this system works. You know, to me, this is really your discussion, and if you all supported this, I feel like it's, you know, in this case, like my job to support what you brought to us. And so that seems confusing to me too, because I don't know that this would have got to this stage where we're seeing it had you all not agreed to send this to us. And so it just feels kind of messy and complicated right now. Yet when I read this, I really believe that I was supporting what the EAS was asking for. And so I don't know if process-wise there's a way, and I don't even know if you're meeting before we go away again. You know, I don't even know if you're meeting again before UBC or before this is, because it would have been good for this to just not have to come here, where it's a decision that you're making because one of your electoral areas is being impacted. And that sounds like that's what you've said to us, and that's what you're bringing to us at this board, to acknowledge that this impact is real. And so under the spirit of that being my understanding, I feel inclined to support what's being presented because it is just simply providing the feedback that's being requested. And it's part of a much larger process where feedback is being collected. And so, and I feel torn about that because I don't feel like this is the place that it should have come for that decision. So maybe it is at staff with the director that it could go back to. I don't know if that's possible either. And at the same time, if this is a process that it has to go through, then I guess this is the process that we're stuck with having to go through. But it doesn't feel, it feels like something's out of alignment here.
Thank you for your observation. I'm going to suggest that we've heard from everyone that's wanted to share something a one time around. I've got 2 more names on the list for a second go at it, but what I would like to suggest is that we take 5 minutes, and I'm going to caucus with Mr. Carruthers and Ms. Legault and come back and see if we might have a suggestion for moving this forward. So let's take a few minutes and we'll come back. You want to be on the list to speak? I'll put you on. About sleeping bags isn't too far off.
It's cooler now. Well, it's either hot or freezing cold.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, let's come back to order. I think Mike's out. So we've had some discussion, and I'm kind of characterizing this as that perfect might be the enemy of good, and Ms. Legault and Mr. Carruthers and Director Marsh has had some comment, and our General Manager of Land Use Planning has had some comment, and there's general consensus of a potential path forward here, which I'm just going to turn to Mr. Carruthers and have him lay it out as to what might be a possible way to address this.
Mr. Chair, am I still on your speakers list?
I've got Marsh and Sebring as, no, McGonigal, Marsh, and Sebring.
Thank you.
Mr. Carruthers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so you've got a couple of options, and one that I would suggest the board may want to consider in this case, just in terms of background. Typically, when the regional district would get a referral like this, it would very much be a technical response in terms of an analysis of local land use policies and that sort of thing. However, there was a request to be considered stakeholder input, community input, which is difficult for staff to address, which is why it ended up at Electoral Area Services for consideration as correspondence. That's not a typical process. So what I would suggest you do is a 2-pronged approach, that staff reply to the referral as we would typically with this type of a referral, with a technical analysis of what's being proposed. And I would suggest that given the dynamics of a regional district and your electoral area representation, that your opportunity for conveying interests on behalf of the community members would best be conveyed by the area director. And that you allow the area, or the area director, you don't have to allow, the area director has the prerogative to represent their constituents in terms of either in writing and also in terms of an appearance at a public hearing to express concerns being heard. And I think that would allow the local residents to be heard by the area director and not put this board in an awkward situation that you're currently struggling with right now around what your role is in responding as a government to another government's land use decisions. And I would suggest that you consider that as an option for moving forward.
No, hang on, we have a speakers list here, so I will go to Directors McGonigal, Marsh, and Sebring, and perhaps Ms. Legault might be scratching away furiously, or Director Stone might be, or Carruthers will be pounding away at something as a resolution. Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much, and I think that was the approach that I was looking for, that the intent was to see if it aligned with the economic development function and the industrial land use function within the regional district. And the concerns of the electoral area director should not be coming from the director of Saltaire, for instance. I think it should reside within that electoral area that she represents or he represents. The municipality of North Cowichan did not have to bring this forward as input. Very seldom municipalities bring those referrals forward to the regional district unless they're contentious issues, and I understand this is a contentious issue. No? I think we've had a few in the past, but I think it would reside more in a technical entity from the board with the affected electoral area director, as Mr. Carruthers stated, voicing their concerns, not only in a written form, but also in the public hearing mode. She will be there with her representatives or his representatives, whatever the case may be. That would be the avenue that I would broach personally. I don't think that as a municipal director, having input on this sort of thing would be appropriate within electoral land uses for me to have input in. So I struggle with that concept of it.
Thank you. I've got Director Marsh, Sebring, and Stone. Director Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I agree. I concur with what Director McGonigal said. I think that's a great idea. And it occurred to me that if there was any other area director that was getting a lot of feedback from their constituents, they'd be free to do the same thing as the most affected director. So that makes more sense to me than yeah, it just makes more sense to me. And I think for myself, it takes me out of feeling that I'm participating in something that I've already heard this from these people. And if I'm voting on it, it's just, I mean, I've been told by staff that there isn't any worry about it, but it does just look awkward for me. But anyway. So I be prepared to support a motion to the effect that Director McGonigal said.
Thank you, Director Sebring.
I'm going to acknowledge that this thing had its genesis, and I'm going to read the germane paragraph from the letter, which, by the way, was sent to the CAO, not to the board. And the letter says that this zoning bylaw amendment has been prepared in response to zoning amendment applications, but given first and second reading. And here's the sentence: the municipality is now seeking community and stakeholder input on the proposed bylaw prior to consideration of third reading and adoption. And I think there is the root of the problem. And that letter didn't cross my desk as mayor in North Cowichan. Perhaps in the future they should, because I probably would have caught it. So I acknowledge that that's what we're asking for. a couple of other things that I didn't mention, and I had them in my notes, and I'm just going to throw it out there for the benefit of the board. There's a quote from the staff report that accompanies this, which says staff, that's CVRD staff, understand the current zoning of the proposed expansion area is roughly 40% industrial 2 and 60% agricultural rural resource 4. Staff at North Cowichan has informed me that the zoning amendment does not apply to the A4 zone lands. So again, there's, you know, some misinformation. If you actually read through the attached documents which were attached to the letter of referral, and I go to what somebody said earlier about the industrial park at Drinkwater and the highway, actually part of what's being proposed here as an amenity from the proponent is a multi-million-dollar water reservoir on the slopes of Mount Prevost, so now that industrial park would become functional for the CVRD. And again, that's not something that was considered at EASC, and it's not being considered here. I come back and I appreciate Mr. Carruthers' point about the technical input, and I'm going to try to stay in my lane, but I'm just going to say this on the Cowichan Bay file on process. Initially, the CVRD sent a letter to North Cowichan asking for referral, and our staff looked at it and said, there's nothing in here that violates our OCP or any other land use or environmental policies. And that went back. And then the politicians got hold of it, and that's when things spun up. So there is a precedent here for technical staff-to-staff communication, and that was the intent of this referral letter, and I'm sorry it ran off the rails. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sebring. Director Stone. Director Nicholson.
I think the bigger issue here is how we can collaborate on regional thinking when there are these issues that do affect more than just one jurisdiction. So noise is one of those things that has no boundaries. And, you know, I think in terms of the estuary, it is important for the whole region. So, like, these are big issues, some of these land use things, and I would just hope that we can work towards a more collaborative way of thinking about how we do land use in the region. And we have the Cowichan 2050 framework, but I certainly don't see the framework being reflected in our discussions or how we go about doing things here.
Thank you. Do we have a recommended resolution from staff, Mr. Carruthers?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Suggest for your consideration that staff be directed to provide a technical analysis and response to the Municipality of North Cowichan referral regarding the zoning amendment for Vancouver Island Motorsport Circuit. I would suggest that it can be that simple. The ability for the area director to represent interests do not need to be included in a resolution.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any what? Oh. Any further discussion? I will call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. The motion carries. Can someone get Director Wilson, please? Eat all the cookies.
Chocolate ones for sure. Well, there wasn't any chocolate ones. Oh, I never got one. You didn't bring any back? Oh.
All right, order, everyone. Next item. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is PH1, Public Hearing Minutes and Exhibits, CVRD Bylaw Number 4256 and 4257, Couverton Real Estate Timber West Forest 2 Limited. And the recommendation for consideration is that the public hearing minutes and exhibits CVRD Bylaw Number 4256, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls, Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw, Couverton Real Estate / Timber West Forest 2 Limited 2019, and CVRD Bylaw Number 4257, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls zoning amendment bylaw, Cougarden Real Estate / Timber West Forest 2 Limited, 2019, be received.
Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director Acton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is there any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to bylaws, item B1. That CVRD bylaw number 4293, Lake Cowichan Fire Protection Service Amendment Bylaw 2019, be granted first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? There's none opposed. The motion carries. Ms. Legault, 15.
Thank you. Item BEA1, that CVRD bylaw number 4256, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls, Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw, Cougarden Real Estate / Timber West Forest 2 Limited, be granted third reading.
Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. BEA 2.
The recommendation is that CVRD bylaw number 4257, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls zoning amendment bylaw, Cougarden Real Estate / Timber West Forest 2 Limited, for third reading.
Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director Salmon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? There's none opposed. The motion carries, and the director for the area thanks you all very, very much. Next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're down to new business and item NB1.
Director Acton, I think you were going to introduce this, were you not?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request that a briefing session be organized with members of the Advisory Planning Commissions of the electoral areas of Park Commission of Kerry Park, just A, B, and C. Parks Commission, the Kerry Park, and the Shawnigan Lake Recreation Commission within the South Cowichan area, areas A, B, and C, to update them on the South Cowichan Liquid Waste Management Plan prior to the public meeting scheduled in October.
And you're moving that item?
I move that item.
Seconder, seconded by Director Sebring. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed? That motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to question period. There's no further business.
We're at our favorite part of the day, question period. Are there any members of the gallery that would like to pose a question to the chair, and I will endeavor to provide a sensible answer? Ms. Kaufman, what could we do for you?
Mr. Chair, would it be possible for the resolution to be read out so members of the gallery that weren't able to get back in the building because there was nobody downstairs, hear what it was in regards to SR2?
It's not normal procedure, and I'd be more than willing to have someone at the end of the meeting share it with them.
Thank you. It was a very interesting discussion, to say the least, on SR2, and it will require, I'm sure, further investigation by staff and the board on procedures should something like this ever arise again. One of the issues that I raised at the ESC meeting, and this is a question, on April 19th, 2017, Mr. Chair, you made a request for North Cowichan to be invited to attend the ESC to discuss the land use in question. I did not get an answer if that invitation was sent and whether it was accepted or declined. Could I?
this is really stretching the gray matter here, but my understanding of the time when I was the chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee is that there was, I don't believe a formal written letter sent, but I believe discussion was had, and it was decided at the time that North Cowichan would not be presenting back to the Electoral Area Services because it wasn't appropriate for a neighboring jurisdiction to present to a committee. That's my recollection of it. I could be way off, but that seems to ring true in my mind.
Thank you for that. When speaking to the technical response that staff will be presenting, we've had several of the directors ask about the original initiatives, much of which is contained in the Cowichan 2050. Is part of the data that will be supplied referring to that, or strictly to similar zonings? And understanding that this application is now creating a new zone, a comprehensive development zone.
I don't mean to sound evasive, but I think that the intent of what we resolved to do tonight was to separate the technical, non-political aspect of the referral from the potentially political aspect of it. So I'm really reluctant to suggest, infer anything around what the staff may ultimately, in their professional opinion, provide to North Cowichan in the way of a technical document.
It is a muddy situation, no doubt. And perhaps, maybe, Mr. Chair, is that why we do not have a regional planning strategy? Or you know that was coming. You know that was coming.
I'm grasping at wrapping my brain around that one, and I'd be more than willing to discuss this either at the next meeting or on the side with you. That's a deep question, and I'm not prepared to answer at this point.
Thank you for that. Just one other note for the municipal directors that are here. Area E, OCP, does not, and zoning bylaw, does not include motorsports of any kind or the use of remote control aircraft. I just wanted to share that with you because we are the closest neighbor and the most impacted. And I think that is a technical part that could be included in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. Are there any other members of the gallery that would like to test the chair's brain and ask me a question? Oh, I thank you so much. And I also just want to stop before we adjourn and thank all the members of the board for a very hard day, for respectful and thoughtful and considerate deliberations on behalf of the public. I really appreciate everybody's input and work today and that of staff as well. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Smith. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.